Did you notice that there's a lot of Bible reading in this Sunday's worship? Well, I tried to reduce the number of passages we would read, but I just couldn't do it. Every one of the readings spoke to me personally. So let me offer a few reflections on these wonderful texts. First, I was both surprised and delighted in today's Pentecost readings to find so much about ecology. It shouldn't have surprised me, for before it was anything else, Pentecost was a harvest festival. I wish that this ecological aspect were not so uniformly obscured as it usually is in the Church's celebration of the coming of the Spirit. For in our present day ecological crisis, we would do well to relearn the ways of the Spirit, upon whose blessing the land depends, and whose blessings flow when the land is cultivated gently by those who respect the rhythms of creation. The harvest of the land and the great harvest of humanity could be jointly celebrated in the Christian Pentecost. Certainly our readings for Pentecost, the great creation psalm, Psalm 104, and that wonderful piece in Romans 8, stress the interrelatedness of humanity with the rest of creation. They remind us of the importance of the natural world to God and to humans. As St. Paul puts it, we know that the whole creation has been groaning in labour pains until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. Well, if the Pentecost readings celebrate ecology, they also celebrate human community in all its diversity. It's there, of course, in the great vision of the prophet Joel. In the last days it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon my slaves, both men and women, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. It's there too, in the amazing way that the Spirit unites the human community, particularly perhaps the believing community, but it's offered too to the wider world. What a contrast to the ways employed by the principalities and powers. When the forces of empire want to unite the world, they do it, at least in part, by imposing a universal language, whether Greek, Latin, or even English. Everyone must learn the one language. This is at the heart of empire and colonialism. But by the Spirit at Pentecost, God speaks and we all hear in our own languages. In effect, God affirms Welsh and Gaelic and every national, regional and tribal language of the world. God does not force everyone to be the same, but speaks to us all in our own language. What a beautiful and amazing truth that is. The Spirit unites us while at the same time honouring and celebrating human diversity. Surely there's a lesson there for those who think that everyone should be the same. Now, is it just me? Or is there also in these readings, and especially in the Acts reading, a word of encouragement for us in our hoped for emergence out of pandemic lockdown and isolation? We, like those first disciples, are waiting. We do not know quite what the future will look like, but we have the sense that we're on the cusp of new possibilities. I don't know about you, but I found real joy when I read how the Spirit drove the disciples out to encounter other human beings face to face and in person. No computer screens, no telephones, no email, and no Zoom. Of course, we're thankful for technologies that have made lockdowns almost bearable, but we long for personal interaction, chance encounters, and unhindered community life. The Spirit brought exactly this to the believers at the first Christian Pentecost, and may be about to do something similar for us. Finally, I was struck as I read Acts chapter 2 by the sheer dependence of the early church on God. The disciples were huddled together, waiting in an upper room, and the Spirit was unleashed upon them. Like the dry bones in Ezekiel's valley, the disciples were lifeless, dead, useless without the Spirit. Yes, without the Spirit, the disciples were nothing and could do nothing. Their vitality depended on the pouring out of the Spirit. Is it any different today? Sometimes I fear our technologies, our programs, plans and organization can fool us into thinking that we have all that we need and that everything is well. Yet we are every bit as dependent on God's unpredictable Spirit as were the first disciples. If the church, if our church is to re-emerge, if it is to bear witness in vital person-to-person mission once again, she will need the revivifying work of the Spirit of God. What was it Jesus said? I am the vine, you are the branches. Apart from me, you can do nothing. How we need the Spirit of the triune God to blow through our lives as a church and individually, to wake us up and give us life. I wonder, how much of God is there in our lives? And how much more might there be by the grace of God and the Spirit's work? May the Spirit of the living God fall afresh on all of us this Pentecost. Amen.